My name is Amanda Reese. I bought my dream home with no help from anyone, just hard work, late nights, and every penny saved. But the very people who should have been proud tried to humiliate me in front of the whole world, and they had no idea I'd make them regret it. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments. I'd love to see how far this story travels. You know that moment when everything feels right. When your world aligns, your lungs expand a little deeper and you actually feel proud of yourself. That was me, standing in my new kitchen in Charlotte, North Carolina, sun pouring through the massive window above the sink, smelling like fresh paint and lemon oil. I just posted a photo on Instagram, me holding the keys in one hand, a coffee mug in the other, smile wide as the sky. Caption: officially a homeowner, built this from the ground up. No apologies. I even added one of those little sparkle emojis. Because why not? I worked for this. I earned this. And for a brief, fleeting moment, I felt like maybe my family would be proud too. It took exactly 7 minutes for the first comment to land. Must be nice to waste money on ego, my mother wrote. Publicly. Not a DM. Not even a sarcastic emoji to soften it. Just that. I stared at it for a full 30 seconds, like maybe the pixels would rearrange themselves into something less cruel. Then came my sister Kelsey's contribution. Guess we know who's too good for family now. My hands trembled as I typed back. Just proud of what I've worked for. I read it out loud in my fake upbeat customer service voice before hitting send. The worst part, I meant it. I wanted them to know I was proud, not rubbing it in, not gloating, just proud. But pride in my family is a trigger word. It meant you thought you were better. It meant you were asking to be dragged. I closed the app and tried to shake it off. I walked around the house, touching the granite counters like they were fragile. Tried to remind myself this was mine. Mine alone. That no nasty comment could take this from me. But hours later, curled up on my brand new sectional with a glass of wine I didn't even want, I made the mistake of checking the family group chat. And that's when it got worse. Screenshots of my Instagram post, circled in red like a crime scene. A meme someone made of my smiling photo with a glitter filter and the words, "When you spend $425K on a house just to eat frozen pizza alone." Underneath, Kelsey had written, "Queen of priorities." My dad replied with a laughing emoji. They weren't just mocking me. They were bonding over it. I sat there in silence, phone screen burning my lap, wine untouched. I wanted to scream. Instead, I took a deep breath and clicked out of the chat. I told myself maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just their way of joking. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. There was no mistaking the tone. This wasn't light teasing. It was contempt. It was the beginning of something. And I didn't know it yet. But this moment, this wound, this shock, it was only the first blow in a betrayal so brazen, it would shake the very foundation of what I believed family meant. I didn't hear from them for almost 2 weeks. No calls, no texts, just the occasional like on a meme someone else posted. Silence, that special kind of quiet that's thick with unsaid things. Then came the invitation, Kelsey's birthday dinner, at our parents' house, of course. I stared at the group message for a good 5 minutes. It was worded like nothing had happened. Dinner at 6 on Saturday for Kelsey's birthday. Birthday balloon family only. Amanda, bring wine. Family only. As if I hadn't just been the family punchline. I typed sure and left it at that. The night of the dinner, I almost didn't go. I must have changed my outfit 5 times. It felt ridiculous, but I couldn't shake the feeling that walking into that house would be like stepping into a courtroom. Except they were judge, jury, and executioner, and I didn't even know what the charges were yet. I finally settled on something casual but nice, a pale blue blouse and dark jeans. I brought 2 bottles of Cabernet, like some peace offering no one asked for. The moment I stepped inside, my mom gave me one of those tight, cheek-kiss greetings that smelled like forced civility and pot roast. "Amanda," she said like it tasted strange. "You look tired." "I'm fine," I lied. "Happy birthday, Kelsey." Kelsey gave me a side hug, already flushed from whatever fruity cocktail our dad mixed. "Hey, homeowner," she smirked. "Still drinking cheap wine with all that square footage." I laughed politely. I was already counting the minutes until I could leave. Dinner was crowded and loud, with mismatched folding chairs pulled from the garage to accommodate everyone. Kids ran under the table, someone spilled gravy on the tablecloth, and the candles Mom insisted on kept sputtering out. At some point, I excused myself to grab the wine from the kitchen. That's when I heard it. Their voices floated through the hallway, my mom and Kelsey, talking in low, urgent tones near the pantry. I froze in place just behind the kitchen archway. "So we'll move Kelsey and Trevor into Amanda's place before the baby comes," Mom was saying, like she was discussing a new couch delivery. "She'll understand eventually." Kelsey didn't even hesitate. "Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense. She's got the room, and it's not like she needs all that space alone. Plus, the neighborhood's perfect for the baby." "Exactly. And it'll be easier to sell it later if it's already in the family." "Sell it." I nearly dropped the bottle. I stood there, back pressed against the refrigerator, every muscle stiff. My ears were ringing. I replayed the words in my head just to be sure I'd actually heard them. They were planning to move into my house. Behind my back, I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. I stayed frozen for another minute, afraid the clink of the wine bottle might alert them. Then, as casually as I could manage, I tiptoed toward the bathroom and shut the door quietly behind me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock my phone. I opened a text thread with my best friend, Malia. I just overheard them. They're planning to move Kelsey and Trevor into my house, without asking me, like it's a done deal. They said I'll understand eventually. What the actual hell? Her response came within seconds. "Malia, get out of there and call me now." "Malia, I'm serious. Leave. Now." I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Part of me wanted to confront them right then and there, slam the wine on the table and demand answers. But another part, the part that felt like a quiet fire in my stomach, whispered, "No, not yet." If this was how they operated, assuming, scheming, betraying, then I needed to think, not react. So I flushed the toilet for effect, splashed water on my face, and walked back into the dining room like nothing had happened. I handed over the wine, pasted on a smile, and even complimented the meatloaf. But something had shifted. In me, I wasn't confused anymore. I was furious. And I wasn't going to let them take one more thing from me. The next morning, I sat on my front porch, still in pajamas, staring out at the street like the pavement might offer me some clarity. My coffee had gone cold in my hands. I hadn't slept. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Kelsey and Mom in that pantry, whispering like villains in a soap opera, planning my eviction like it was just another birthday surprise. "Why are you shaking your mug like it's a magic 8-ball? Malia's voice cut through my spiral. She stepped onto the porch with her usual confidence, black leggings, oversized hoodie, messy bun like a crown. She'd let herself in with the spare key I always forget I gave her. "You look like you aged 6 years overnight," she added, plopping down next to me on the porch swing. I didn't say anything at first. I just handed her my phone and let her scroll through the texts I'd sent her from the bathroom last night. When she finished reading, she looked up slowly, eyebrows raised. "They actually said that, out loud," I nodded. "To each other in English. Like I wasn't even part of the equation," I murmured. "They made it sound like my house was already theirs, like it's some family heirloom I'm temporarily babysitting." Malia whistled and leaned back, her foot nudging the swing into motion. "That's not entitlement, that's conquest." "I just keep replaying it," I said, voice tight. "They weren't even worried about how I'd react, like I don't get a say." "You don't," Malia said, blunt as always. "Not in their version of reality. In their world, you're the family donor, not a person." I laughed bitterly. "You make it sound so charitable." "Hey," she said, turning serious, "what are you going to do?" I stared out at my manicured lawn. The forsythia bushes were blooming, bright yellow and stupidly cheerful. "I don't know," I admitted. "I don't want a war." Malia tilted her head. "Amanda, you already have a war, you just didn't start it." I let that sink in. She was right. For so long, I'd been walking on eggshells, trying not to rock the boat, keeping peace by playing small, laughing off their jabs, downplaying my success. But they weren't just poking fun anymore. They were positioning themselves to take what I'd built. "You need to get ahead of this," Malia said quietly. "Like now," I turned to her. "And do what? Kick them out preemptively from a house they haven't even entered." "Sell it," I blinked. "What? Sell the house, move before they ever get the chance. They're planning around you, Amanda. You need to make a move they didn't see coming. I opened my mouth to argue, but the words caught in my throat. Could I really do that? This place is mine, I said, almost to myself. It's the first thing I've done entirely for me. Selling it feels like giving up. No, Melia said firmly. Selling it is taking the board off the table. It's not surrender, it's strategy. I stared at her. You've been watching too much chess drama again. Guilty, she grinned. But seriously, you can buy another house. You can build again. But you can't build if they're nesting in your living room, Amanda. That's not a home, that's a hostage situation. I sighed. Melia pulled out her phone. I know a realtor, friend of a friend, quiet, fast, good with discreet deals. Discreet? I raised an eyebrow. Well, unless you want your mom showing up to the open house with a pitchfork, yeah, discreet is good. We sat there in silence for a moment, just the swing creaking and the breeze catching the edge of my robe. Finally, I nodded, just once, just enough. Okay, I whispered. Call him. Melia smiled. Downtown Charlotte always felt like a second heartbeat to me, fast, rhythmic, electric. But that day, sitting at a corner table in a quiet cafe just off Tryon Street, everything felt suspended, like time was watching me. The place smelled like espresso and old wood, with tall windows and the kind of lighting that made secrets feel safe. Perfect for what I was about to do. James Ellison walked in exactly on time. He was younger than I expected, late 30s maybe, with a sharp navy blazer and glasses he didn't seem to need. He spotted me instantly and made his way over, iPad already in hand. You must be Amanda, he said warmly, extending his hand. Melia says you're smart, decisive, and allergic to drama. I gave a weak smile. 2 out of 3. He chuckled and sat across from me, laying the tablet on the table like a poker player about to deal cards. So, how private are we keeping this? Top secret, I said. Like James Bond level quiet. I need to sell my house without my family knowing. Yet. He didn't blink. I've done quieter. That was a relief. I leaned in, voice low. They think they're going to move in, my sister and her husband. My mom already has the baby room picked out, and I haven't even agreed to lend them a couch cushion. James raised an eyebrow, then started tapping notes. And I assume it's in your name alone. Completely. No shared mortgage, no co-signers, all me. Good, that makes this cleaner. He started showing me options. Private listings, expedited sales, title companies that didn't raise red flags. He explained how we could use a blind trust for the transaction if I wanted to disappear from the radar entirely. It was like watching someone turn a blurry nightmare into a checklist I could manage. The market's still hot in your neighborhood, James explained, flipping to a graph. If we price slightly under market, we could be in contract within a week, maybe less. I blinked. A week? You'd be surprised how fast people jump at the right opportunity. And my family won't be notified. He shook his head. No mailers, no signs, no online listing tied to your name. Everything goes through an alias trust. The only way they find out is if you tell them. I exhaled slowly. Something uncoiled in my chest. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. What about the money? I asked. Once the sale goes through, we'll set up a secondary account for the proceeds. If you're worried about interference, we can use a private banking advisor to set restrictions on withdrawals and access notifications. I stared at the screen. My house, the house I built, designed, poured myself into, was now a little icon on a real estate dashboard. James must have sensed the shift in my expression. This isn't erasing what you built, he said gently. It's preserving your freedom and maybe even your sanity. I let the words settle. He was right. Selling didn't mean surrender. It meant no one else got to twist it into leverage. No one else got to turn my success into their entitlement. I glanced up at him. Let's do it. James grinned and opened the file app. Perfect. Let's sell your house before they try to steal it. I gave a soft laugh, more breath than sound, and sat back. It was happening, not out of fear, out of power, and they'd never see it coming. Every Sunday dinner at my parents' house felt like walking into a play where everyone else had memorized a script I'd never seen. Tonight, I knew my role. Smile. Keep things light. Pretend the house they planned to steal from under me wasn't already halfway sold. All while sitting across from the very people who thought they were winning. The smell of roasted ham filled the kitchen as I walked in, balancing a cherry pie and my best poker face. "Look who finally made it," Mom said, without turning from the oven. "Thought you'd be too busy hosting dinner in your $400,000 palace." I smiled. "Decided to slum it with the peasants tonight." That earned a snort from Dad and a faint eye roll from Kelsey, who was already parked at the head of the table like a queen expecting to be served. Her baby bump was now unmistakable, framed like a badge of honor in a skin-tight sweater that screamed future matriarch. Dinner kicked off with the usual background noise, passing platters, clinking cutlery, small talk about work, weather, and what my cousin Jaden posted on Facebook. I stayed quiet, let them lead. Then came the drop. "I mean, she's going to need more space soon," Dad said casually, his fork swirling through mashed potatoes but his eyes trained directly on me. Kelsey gave a dramatic sigh and rubbed her stomach. "We just have so much stuff already. Car seat, bassinet, diaper station. And our guest room is barely a closet." Trevor, her husband, chuckled. "The baby's not even here yet and we're out of square footage." My mother smiled sweetly across the table. "It's a good thing the family has options then. We've all got to support each other in times like these." Every word was dipped in syrup, but the meaning was clear. They weren't waiting for me to offer, they were leading me into a corner. "Well," I said, voice light, "Kelsey deserves the best." I raised my wine glass and sipped, pretending not to notice how my mom's eyebrows ticked up just slightly. She was caught off guard by my easy tone. "You know," she continued, "I was thinking, Amanda, you might consider installing a baby gate at the top of your stairs, just to be safe for when the baby visits." I almost laughed, visits, but I kept my face still. "Great idea," I said. "You can never be too careful." Silence stretched for a beat. They were waiting for more, an opening, a handover, an offer that would never come. I gave them none of it. Kelsey cleared her throat. "I saw online someone turning their formal dining room into a nursery. You've got that extra room near the front window, right?" She didn't even look at me when she said it, just kept her eyes on her plate like she was cataloging what was already hers. "Beautiful light in that room," Mom added wistfully. "Would make such a perfect nursery." Dad chimed in. "And that backyard, imagine a playset back there. Safe, fenced in. It's practically a family home already." I smiled again, took another sip of wine. "Sounds like someone should make an offer." Mom laughed like it was a joke, but I didn't blink. The rest of dinner played out like a strange ritual, offers to help with leftovers, a forced group photo at the door, my mother wrapping up pie slices in foil as if packaging affection. When I finally got in my car, I sat there for a long minute, engine idling, fingers tight on the wheel. They were vultures circling a property they thought was theirs. Not one of them had asked how I was doing. Not one had said thank you for dinner or congratulations again. Their version of support meant assuming my sacrifices were on offer. But what they didn't know, what they could never imagine, was that the house they kept drooling over, it was already gone. Later that night, I lit a candle in my living room and opened James' latest email. Closing was set, final walkthrough scheduled. The funds were ready to hit my private account the minute the papers were signed. I stared at the glowing screen, then walked barefoot across the cool hardwood floors one last time. They thought I was too polite to fight. They mistook my silence for surrender. But I was just playing along. Let them think they'd won. They'd learn soon enough I'd never been theirs to manage. The closing papers were signed on a rainy Tuesday morning. No fanfare, no ceremony. Just a conference table, a polite notary, and James sliding the documents across to me with a ballpoint pen that had seen far more dramatic transactions than mine. It was surreal, how quiet it all was. I initialed each page with steady hands. The living room, the lot number, the tax ID, all transferred with the precision of someone who had nothing left to give away for free. James smiled faintly. "That's it. You're officially no longer the owner." I nodded once. That was all I had in me. He handed me a folder and tapped the top sheet. "Funds will hit the trust account by end of day. Your name isn't connected to it. You're protected." It felt like slicing the last thread between who I was trying to be and who I needed to become. By that weekend, I was gone. My new apartment was only 10 minutes away, tucked behind a quiet row of sycamores and a shuttered bookstore that looked like it had a story of its own. The complex was smaller, older, a bit creaky, but it was mine. And more importantly, untraceable to anyone who might assume they still had access to my life. I moved everything myself, box by box, room by room. No moving trucks, no Instagram stories. I didn't even tell Malia until it was done. I wanted a clean break, I said when she showed up later with Thai takeout and her jaw on the floor. Didn't want the noise, didn't want anyone accidentally stopping by. We sat on the floor, eating noodles out of paper cartons and listening to the soft hum of my fridge. You're the only person I know who sells a whole house like a spy in a Cold War movie, Malia said, shaking her head. But damn if it isn't brilliant. I looked around at the unpacked boxes, the bare walls, the unfamiliar ceiling fan spinning overhead. It's not home yet, I admitted, but it's safe. She nodded, eyes soft. And quiet, which might be a miracle in your family. That night after she left, I curled up on the couch with a blanket and opened my laptop. I logged into the private banking portal James had helped me set up. There it was, every dollar from the sale. Tucked inside a trust named after something completely forgettable. Maple Grove Equity Holdings, LLC, boring, invisible, safe, no shared access. No shared name. I stared at the number for a long time. Not because of the money, but because of what it represented. They couldn't touch me anymore, not the house, not the savings, not the security. I whispered it aloud just to hear how it sounded in the air. The house is gone. And then softer. So is their leverage. I closed the laptop, turned out the lights, and let myself feel something I hadn't felt in weeks. Relief, not celebration, not glee, just a still, silent exhale. This wasn't revenge, not yet, this was preparation. And in the quiet of my new life, I started to realize they'd never even noticed me slipping away. The text came at 7:46 a.m. on a Thursday. From my mother, no greeting, no punctuation. Just, we'll be there with the moving truck by noon. I stared at my phone like it had spoken a foreign language. No context, no follow-up. Just the arrogant assumption that I would know exactly what she meant. And I did. They were actually doing it. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Instead, I opened the Ring app on my phone, thumb hovering over the live feed. It felt almost theatrical, like I was settling in to watch the final act of a play where the villain thinks they've won just before the curtain drops. Noon came, and so did the truck. A dented white rental with easy move peeling off the side pulled into the driveway of my former house. I watched from my apartment, feet curled under me, coffee steaming in my hands. First out of the cab, Trevor. Baseball cap backward, sunglasses on, looking like the world owed him 2 favors and a parking spot. Then Kelsey, waddling dramatically out of the passenger seat, belly first, holding a diaper bag in one hand and a pink baby bouncer in the other. And then my mother, commanding, clipboard in hand, already pointing to the porch like she was directing a home renovation show. They were all dressed like it was moving day. Leggings, old t-shirts, hair pulled up. No knock, no warning, just a stroll up the front steps like they were returning to a vacation home they'd loaned me for the winter. Kelsey tried the doorknob first. It didn't budge. I could see her brows furrow in confusion. She jiggled it again. Then Mom stepped forward, pulling out a key. Probably the spare I gave her a year ago for emergencies only. She jammed it in the lock and paused. Then again, harder this time. Her mouth started moving. I turned up the Ring volume. "It's not working," she snapped. Trevor came over, trying it himself. "Why doesn't the key work?" He pounded on the door with the side of his fist. "Amanda, hello?" Kelsey dropped the baby gear on the porch and bent over, hands on knees, clearly exasperated. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. She knew we were coming. Mom started dialing her phone. I recognized that face, tight lips, wild eyes, the barely restrained fury of someone who just realized they weren't in control anymore. My phone started buzzing immediately. Call after call after call, I didn't answer. Then came the texts, "Open the door." "What is going on? Did you change the locks? Where are you?" "Amanda, this is serious. We have the baby gear. We planned around this." Planned around this. Like I was just an inconvenience in their beautifully drawn blueprint. I muted the ringer and watched as Kelsey pulled out her phone. A few minutes later, her face popped up on my screen, a video message. I hesitated, then hit play. Mascara streaked, hair a mess, voice trembling with the beginnings of fury. "She betrayed us," Kelsey said into the camera, sniffling. "She knew we were coming. She did this on purpose." Us, as if we were opposing teams in a war I never declared. The video cut off and my phone lit up again. This time it was Facebook. My mother had posted. "After all we've done for her, after all we gave." Amanda Reese turned her back on her family. She chose money over blood and were heartbroken. There it was. The beginning of the smear campaign. They were scrambling now, trying to rewrite the narrative, paint themselves as the victims, me as the cold-hearted villain who locked out her pregnant sister. But I didn't budge, didn't post a rebuttal, didn't reply. Because the truth didn't need defending. The house wasn't mine anymore. The keys didn't work for them anymore. And for the first time in my life, neither did I by nightfall. I'd stopped counting the calls. 67, maybe more. My phone was on silent, face down, blinking like a warning light every few seconds. Each notification felt like a tap on the shoulder from a ghost I hadn't invited. I didn't check my voicemails, not at first. But eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I sat on my new couch in my new apartment, curled in a fleece blanket, and tapped play all. The first few were furious. "You think this is funny, Amanda?" My mother's voice blared. "We had a truck full of furniture and a plan. You've humiliated us." Then Kelsey, sobbing through hiccups. "You knew I was pregnant. You knew we were coming. How could you do this to me, to your own family?" Trevor's voice came last, cold, clipped. "You made your choice. Don't come crawling back when this blows up in your face." I deleted them all, but the digital wildfire had already begun. By the next morning, my name was plastered all over Facebook. My mom had posted 3 more times, one with a photo of Kelsey crying on the porch, one with an old family photo from Thanksgiving 2017, back when Amanda still valued family, and one post dripping in venom disguised as virtue. We raised our daughters to be strong. We never expected one of them would weaponize that strength against her blood. No one should be left out in the cold, especially not a pregnant woman. The comments poured in, mostly from people who didn't know me. Distant cousins, old neighbors, church ladies from back home who hadn't spoken to me in years. How could Amanda do that to her sister? I always knew she was selfish. What kind of person sells their home just to spite their family? They made me a villain in a story I didn't even write. But the worst wasn't the posts or the calls or the crying videos. It was the envelope that arrived 2 days later. Plain, cream-colored, hand-delivered by courier. Inside, a formal notice of defamation, filed by my parents, signed by their attorney. I stared at the paper for a full minute, the words swimming in front of me like alphabet soup. They were suing me for ruining their reputation. They claimed the real estate deal and my refusal to communicate had caused emotional distress, that I'd orchestrated a deceptive transfer of property to injure family unity, that I'd used online platforms and private communications to malign and insult the plaintiff's moral character. I actually laughed, out loud, just once, sharp and bitter. The irony was dizzying. They'd dragged me publicly. They'd mocked me in group chats, insulted me online, showed up to a house they never owned with a moving truck and an assumption. And now I was being sued for defamation. My hands were shaking. I snapped a photo of the lawsuit and texted it to Malia. "Me, I guess they weren't done after all. Me, they're really suing me for defamation." She responded instantly. "Malia, you need a lawyer. Like yesterday, Malia, I know someone, bright, sharp, just started his own firm. Malia, his name's Jonah Reed. Want me to call him?" I stared at her message, Jonah Reed. I didn't know the name, didn't care. But I knew one thing, if I was going down, I wasn't going quietly. Jonah Reed's office was tucked above a bakery that smelled like sugar and cinnamon and everything good I didn't feel. The stairs creaked under my boots as I climbed them, lawsuit folder pressed tightly to my chest like a shield. I hadn't slept more than a few hours since the envelope arrived. Malia had made the introduction. "He's young, yeah, but don't let that fool you," she'd said. "He's sharp, no ego, and he actually listens. Which is more than I can say for most." I didn't need a bulldog. I needed someone who believed me, someone who could cut through the chaos without turning it into a performance. His door was already open. The office was simple, clean lines, soft gray walls, no flashy plaques or leather furniture trying to prove something. Just a desk, 2 chairs, a plant in the corner that looked too healthy to be real. Jonah stood as I walked in. Early 30s, maybe, warm brown eyes, rolled up sleeves, a tie that had clearly been loosened hours ago. "Amanda," he said, stepping forward. "I'm Jonah. I'm really glad you came." We shook hands. His grip was firm but not aggressive, just enough to say, "I'm here, let's work." I handed him the folder and sat down. "It's all in there, the notice, their claims, screenshots, texts, everything I've got." He didn't open it right away. Instead, he looked at me. "Before I dive into this," he said gently, "tell me what happened in your words." I took a breath, and then I told him everything. The Instagram post, sarcastic comments, the dinner, the overheard plan, the real estate sale, the ring footage, the Facebook smear campaign, the lawsuit. Every time I hesitated, he waited. Every time I doubted myself mid-sentence, he asked a question that pulled me back. Not once did he interrupt. By the end of it, I felt like I'd just dragged my soul across the floor and laid it bare. Jonah leaned back in his chair, finally flipping open the folder. His eyes scanned the defamation notice, the messages, the screenshots. Occasionally, he scribbled a note or highlighted a line. After a long pause, he looked up. "This," he said carefully, "is messy." I nodded. "I know. But we're going to win." I blinked. "Just like that," he smiled. "You think you're the first person whose family tried to weaponize a narrative? Amanda, you've documented everything. You sold the house legally. You made no public statements. You haven't even retaliated, and believe me, you could have." My throat tightened. "You've done everything right," he continued. "You didn't slander them. You protected yourself. You moved on. They're the ones who made this public. They're the ones who drew blood and are now crying about the cut." I couldn't help it. I laughed just a little. "They're loud," I said, "and convincing. People believe them." "Loud doesn't mean legitimate," Jonah replied. "And in court, drama doesn't win, documentation does." He slid the folder back toward me. "I'm filing a response this week. You'll need to sign a few forms, but once I'm on record, they'll have to come through me, not you." A quiet wave of relief passed over me. He leaned forward, elbows on his desk. "We're not just going to survive this, Amanda. We're going to flip it. I've seen this before. People like them think they can bury you in shame or fear. But what they forget is some of us don't scare that easily." For the first time in days, I exhaled fully. I wasn't alone anymore. I wore navy blue to court. Not because I thought it would make a difference, but because it was the color of restraint, of calm, of someone who had done everything right and still had to defend herself. Malia sat behind me in the gallery, silent but fierce. Jonah stood to my left at the defense table, his tie straight this time, his jaw set. My parents were already seated when we arrived. My mother in a stiff black dress, Kelsey next to her in an exaggerated maternity blouse, cradling her stomach like it might get her bonus points. Trevor wore a smug little smirk like he already knew the ending. They didn't look at me once. The courtroom was cold, too quiet. And when the judge walked in, something in my stomach twisted. Judge Raymond Coulter. Late 50s, gray hair, expression like stone. He didn't glance at us when he sat. Didn't offer the usual warm greeting. Just shuffled some papers, adjusted his glasses, and said, "Let's begin." Jonah stood, steady as ever. "Your Honor, the defense will show that the plaintiff's case is not only meritless, but a targeted retaliation against my client for exercising her legal property rights and personal privacy." He spoke clearly, laying out the timeline, referencing the documents we'd compiled, texts, group chat screenshots, the ring footage, even the posts from my mom's Facebook. It was all so clean, so obvious. I kept watching the judge's face, waiting for any flicker of acknowledgement. There wasn't one. When my parents' attorney stood, everything got theatrical. "She humiliated her family," the lawyer said. "She sold the house as an act of cruelty. My client had every reason to believe the home would be shared. Instead, she shut them out, literally and figuratively, and caused severe emotional distress, especially to her pregnant sister." He actually said pregnant like it was a legal trump card. Jonah objected to the narrative framing, and the judge waved it off. And then came the decision. No deliberation. No pause. Judge Coulter adjusted his glasses and said, "In consideration of the reputational harm and emotional duress suffered by the plaintiffs, the court finds in their favor." I froze. My ears buzzed. My pulse pounded so loud I couldn't hear what came next, but I saw Jonah stiffen. I saw my mother's lips curl into a satisfied smile. I saw Kelsey dab fake tears from her eyes like an actress collecting her award. It felt like the oxygen had been sucked from the room. The gavel came down and I didn't move. I couldn't. Outside the courthouse, everything looked the same: blue sky, honking traffic, a man selling pretzels on the corner, but nothing felt real. Jonah walked beside me in silence, his briefcase clenched tight in one hand. Back at his office, he threw it onto the desk and paced. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. "It's too fast, too convenient." He sat down, opened his laptop, and started typing furiously. No hearing on evidence, no analysis of slander, just a sweeping ruling based on emotional claims. It's almost like he knew what verdict he was supposed to deliver. I said nothing. I just sat there on the couch, numb. I had followed every rule, documented every step, kept quiet when I wanted to scream, and still I lost. Jonah kept digging, opening files, pulling up court records. He was muttering numbers and names under his breath when he finally looked up. "I'm staying late tonight," he said. "I need to dig deeper." I nodded, hollow. As I turned to leave, he said quietly, "Amanda, this isn't over." I didn't answer, but somewhere inside me something small flared, not hope exactly. Something colder, like suspicion learning how to burn. Jonah's office after dark didn't feel like a law firm. It felt like a war room. The city outside had gone quiet, the kind of hush that made you forget Charlotte ever had traffic or sirens. The only noise now was the soft whir of Jonah's old desktop and the occasional rustle of papers as he dug through files with the focus of someone chasing a ghost no one else believed in. I had dozed off in the corner, coat still on, arms folded against the chill in the air. My body was exhausted, but my mind never stopped pacing. Even in sleep, I was preparing for a battle I hadn't chosen. When I woke, it was to the soft click of a folder landing on the desk. Jonah was still at his computer, but something in his posture had shifted. He wasn't just working, he was locked in. He looked up slowly, eyes alert but not surprised to see me awake. "You stayed," he said, almost like a question. I sat up. "Didn't feel like going home." He nodded once and turned the monitor toward me. On the screen was a banking interface, basic, gray, utilitarian. But what it showed made my chest tighten. One transfer, just one. $15,000, deposited 5 days before our hearing. From an account labeled RKT Family Holdings LLC into a trust account connected to Judge Raymond Coulter. My blood turned to ice. "RKT," I said quietly. "Reese, Kelsey, Trevor." Jonah didn't look away. "I found the holding company buried under 2 other shells, but the paper trail, it's there." I stared at the screen, unblinking. I wasn't imagining things, the bad gut feeling, the cold, robotic verdict, the way the judge hadn't even looked at me. They didn't win the case, they bought it. Jonah leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled under his chin. "It's not definitive proof, yet. The judge could claim it was an investment, a loan, 100 other things, but it's suspicious enough to trigger a review." He tapped the keyboard again, pulling up a file. "There's a history. Coulter's been cited before minor complaints, mostly dismissed, but nothing with this level of financial overlap." A laugh escaped me, bitter and breathless. "They didn't just try to steal my house," I said. "They tried to rewrite the truth legally." Jonah met my eyes. "And now we make it public." He said it so plainly, so casually. But those 4 words shifted something tectonic in me. I stood, slowly crossing to the window. Outside, the city lights blinked like warnings, or maybe signals, like something was finally about to happen. "They think I'll cave," I said. "They think I'll back down like I always do, keep the peace, carry the guilt." "They're counting on it," Jonah replied. "That's the play, buy your silence with fear, but this," he pointed to the screen, "this is how we burn the playbook." My hands clenched at my sides. I could still see my mother's face, triumphant outside that courtroom. Kelsey's crocodile tears. The way Trevor looked at me like I was the broken piece of a perfect plan. They thought they'd buried me in shame, but they'd just handed me a shovel. "And what if they try to bury this?" I asked, turning back to Jonah. "What if they spin it, hide it, deny it?" He smiled then, not the polite lawyer smile, but something colder, smarter. "They can try." He opened a new file. A drafted letter, a formal request for judicial misconduct investigation. We go to the board, request a new hearing, we leak nothing yet, but if they retaliate. He looked me dead in the eye. Then we let it all burn. I sank back into the chair, heart pounding, but not from fear, from something else. Resolve. For the first time in months, I wasn't just surviving. I was preparing to strike. 3 weeks later, I stood in a different courtroom. Different judge. Different energy. Different outcome already humming in the air before anyone said a word. This time, the room didn't feel stacked against me. It didn't feel like I was walking into a trap dressed up as tradition. Judge Lee Bernard, early 40s, sharp eyes, voice like tempered steel, took her seat without fanfare. She greeted both sides with an equal nod, then looked down at the folder in front of her like it was a loaded weapon she planned to disarm with precision. Jonah had told me to be calm, but prepared. "This is the hearing that matters," he'd said. "You don't need to prove you're good, you just need to prove they lied." The room felt electric. My parents sat 2 rows behind me, this time without the smug confidence. Kelsey fidgeted, her stomach no longer the center of attention. Trevor refused to look up from his phone, and my mother sat perfectly still, lips pressed so tight they'd turned white. They hadn't expected this. A second chance. An independent inquiry had concluded that Judge Coulter had failed to disclose financial ties. The $15,000 deposit was just the beginning. There were emails, a phone call from Kelsey to Coulter's office, mentions of a friend doing us a favor. It had all unraveled so fast once Jonah submitted the complaint. Judge Bernard tapped her pen on the desk. "Let's get to the heart of this," she said, her tone brisk. "Ms. Reese, your original case was based on claims that your daughter's decision to sell her home caused emotional damage to your family, that you believed you were entitled to the property, that you were slandered." My mother sat up straighter. "Yes, Your Honor, we were blindsided. She lied to us." Bernard held up a hand. "And yet," she said, flipping to the next page in the file, "there is no legal agreement between you and Ms. Amanda Reese regarding the property. No contract. No verbal commitment backed by documentation. In fact, your daughter owned the home solely and sold it within her rights." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Kelsey opened her mouth, but her attorney gently touched her arm. Not this time. Judge Bernard continued, flipping pages. "And now, after an internal review, it's been determined that the previous ruling was influenced by a financial relationship between your family and Judge Coulter, an undisclosed transfer to a trust tied to his name." She looked directly at my parents. "This court does not tolerate manipulation of systems, people, or truth." Jonah stood beside me, steady and silent, but I could feel the relief starting to hum in his bones. "In light of the new evidence," Bernard said, "this court not only overturns the previous decision but dismisses the defamation case in its entirety, with prejudice." She paused, letting the words settle like a gavel before the gavel. "This matter is closed." My hands trembled in my lap, but I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just breathed deep, clean, free. My mother gasped softly, more insulted than stunned. Kelsey looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. And Trevor had already stood, storming out like the ending offended him. I turned toward them once as I walked out, not to gloat. To remind them this was what truth looked like when you stopped hiding from it. Outside the courthouse, the sky was wide and blue. People bustled down the sidewalks, completely unaware that a war had just ended inside. Jonah joined me at the top of the steps, folder in hand, sleeves rolled to the elbows again. He looked at me, smiling softly. "You did it," he said. I shook my head. "We did." He nodded. "You sure you're okay?" I looked up at the sun, letting it warm my face. "I'm better than okay," I said. "I'm finally clear." For the first time, they couldn't twist the narrative. This wasn't me being dramatic or selfish or bitter. This was justice, and it had my name on it. 6 days after the hearing, I bought a house. Not a showpiece, not an Instagram trophy, just a 2-bedroom modern cottage tucked in the hills of Asheville, surrounded by oaks that turned fire red in the fall and dogwoods that bloomed blush pink in spring. The air here felt different, like it hadn't been shaped by other people's expectations. The house was small but bright. Lots of windows, white walls, and a back deck that overlooked nothing but trees and the distant silhouette of the Blue Ridge Mountains. It was quiet, Not the kind of quiet that makes you lonely. The kind that makes you feel like your thoughts finally have space to breathe. The day I got the keys, I didn't take a picture for social media. I didn't call anyone to brag. I just stood in the empty living room, listening to the faint creak of the floors under my feet, and whispered, "I'm home." I hadn't said those words in a long time, not and meant them. Not when I lived in Charlotte trying to prove something. Not when I bought the last house hoping to earn their respect. But here it was different. Here I didn't owe anyone anything. I spent the first few days painting. Not the walls, those were already perfect. But the mailbox. Black iron with my new last name in gold block letters, Reese. No prefixes. No shared titles, no additions, just mine. I stood back, wiping a smear of gold paint off my cheek with a laugh when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Jonah. Jonah Reed, "Dinner tonight, I owe you a toast." I stared at the screen for a second, lips curving into the first real smile I'd felt in days. I texted back, "Only if you pick the wine." His reply came fast. "Deal, red or white." "Surprise me," I sent. "But no Pinot Grigio. I've grown." An hour later, he pulled into the driveway with a bottle of Malbec, 2 mismatched wine glasses, and a brown paper bag that smelled suspiciously like garlic bread and something worth forgiving yourself for. We sat on the back deck under a sky full of stars, the forest stretching silent and safe around us. We didn't talk about the lawsuit, or my parents, or the chaos. We didn't have to. The silence between us wasn't the kind you rush to fill. It was the kind that says, we made it through. After our second glass, Jonah turned to me. "You ever think it'd end like this?" he asked. I shook my head. "I didn't think it would end at all." He looked out at the trees, then back at me. "I'm glad it did." Me too. And maybe not right away, not in a rush, but maybe this wasn't just an ending. Maybe it was the beginning of something quieter, softer, smarter, not revenge, not victory, just peace. And I was finally ready for it.